I'm Premee Mohamed. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a scientist and novelist working out of Edmonton, Alberta. I'm the author of the Beneath the Rising series and several novellas. My books have recently won a Nebula Award and an Aurora Award. So I chose the novel We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies, which is by Tsering Yangzom Lama. It basically follows four people starting from approximately the period when China invades Tibet, so 1959. And the first narrator is Lamo, who's a young girl when the book starts, and she and her family have to cross the Himalayas as refugees to get to a camp in Nepal. Unfortunately, during the trip, her parents pass away, but she and her younger sister Tenki survive. And what brings them comfort and hope and kind of the ability to keep going is a family friend who brings his young nephew, Thamfel, as well as the statue of a god to the camp. And this god has a reputation for disappearing and reappearing when he's needed to help heal sickness, for example, or to reunite people, or for successful journeys, things like that. And the last person it follows is Dolma, who is Lamo's daughter, who narrates from Canada, where she's attending university and she lives with her aunt Tenki. Basically, it's two stories in this novel. It's about four people trying to rebuild lives that have been pulled physically away from their homes and families, trying to build something in place of that. And the other story is the story of the disappearance and the reappearance of this god. And the reason for that is that Dolma's grown up hearing these stories, and she spots the statue at a party that she's at and realizes that it's a product of the stolen artifact trade. You almost feel like the god is a fifth character, kind of. He has his own story arc. Anyway, it's a wonderful novel about courage and sacrifice and family and community and colonization and the desire for knowledge and freedom and connection, which cannot be extinguished no matter where people are or how far they are from their homes. Um, I found it hard to believe, actually, as a writer myself, that this book was by a debut author. This is an incredibly detailed novel, full of intimate and believable little details, but it's also very ambitious in its structure and scope. I personally, not being an expert critic, I think the ambition paid off, but I'm stunned that someone would choose this for their first novel. The amount of research alone that went into this, I feel, would have taken another author a lifetime to complete. In particular, I really loved the narrative voices, the way they give you a look both outside and inside. These are very introspective people. They're very interior, but they're never overly sentimental or self-centered. They are other-centered. And I think for some readers, they may find that a little surprising or even jarring. But these are people who are focused outward always. They just have a string attached to their heart that the outside world, their family, their friends, their lovers, their situations, history just plucks on constantly. And because of this interiority, you really feel the choices people make. You understand why, with not only clarity, but emotion. You see that there aren't really heroes and villains in this novel, just people choosing what they choose so they can live another day. And so often they regret those choices. And so you feel that regret right along with them. And these aren't people who want to be heroes either. And I think that's, that's a very simplistic black and white Western literature thing, like reading things, trying to figure out who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. Like I keep thinking of Tinky taking transit to her cleaning job with the statue in her bag, trying to figure out what to do next, trying to take back choices she's made and choices Dolma's made and choices people she didn't even know about made. Um, the book also reminded me of a book I finally read recently, Survival in the Killing Fields by Dr. Hang Yor, particularly in the sense of your normal life being upended practically overnight. Like you may have heard rumors of things about to happen, but the shock of having to leave your comfortable life where you feel safe and anchored and you know where all your family is it almost doesn't feel real at first. And I really got that with this novel as well. It was so well expressed. And I also think I really connected with the book because my parents are immigrants, not refugees, but I think of the way their ancestors came to Guyana, where we're from India, because of the British Empire. I think about empires, about people showing up and saying, "This is mine now." There's a quote from the book that goes, "They will not be satisfied with our land alone. They want to possess our minds." So, like, Dolma doesn't speak her mother's language fluently anymore. She wants to study their past because that's been taken from her. And like, my parents didn't grow up speaking Hindi or their other mother tongues because the British insisted that the children go to British schools and learn English. The official language of Guyana, which is in South America, is English. And it also made me think about how my parents, like a lot of immigrants, value security and safety above all else. They're very risk averse people. They prize the chain of education that they hoped their kids would make. Just like in this novel, sending Tenki off to school, but not Lamo. It is so important to go to school. Like, you see these characters doing almost anything to make sure that their kids get an education. And who you learn from in this novel is so important, like from your family, your culture, the monks, teachers that just come into the refugee camp, formal versus informal education, knowing that you're part of that chain. My favorite line from the book, I think, was, "They melt the statues and use the metal to make bullets, Lamo. Then they will kill us with our own gods." And I thought, oh my God, this is always the way of colonization. This is just how it goes. And I loved the little details. Like early in the book, Lamo loses a tooth to biting down on an apple. Like there's these small, intimate, sensory moments. I remember the bus that arrives with people covering their faces so they don't have to look down into the gorge because they're used to walking along that path and they're not used to moving along it at speed. And then the driver pedaling Samfel and Lamo in the city and his hairy legs brushing up against their backs and tickling them, like Tenki building her shrine of stones under the bridge in Toronto and talking to the hunger strikers. It's just everything feels very, both very high level and very zoomed in. I really loved it. Uh, I think this book should win the Giller Prize because this is such a deeply empathetic book. And I think it would be impossible to read it and not come away from it feeling as if you're irrevocably connected much more closely to everyone in your life than you think you are. And even to your ancestors, to people you don't know, people you've never met. Like, this is a book that says, we are all connected. Why shouldn't we be? What do we therefore owe each other about that connection? And I think this is also a book that Canadians might read and think to ourselves specifically, yes, this is something I want to believe about Canada. To understand what these refugees want for their lives and why they want it is such a tremendous argument for Canadians as a whole to remind ourselves who we are. People who want to help, who want to give back, who want to let people who are fleeing danger and oppression into our country and help them become our best selves. People who are a country of colonizers for the most part, who don't think about the people our ancestors displaced to let us become dominant here. We need to think closely about the sacrifices people have made to come to Canada. And that means colonists, immigrants, refugees, everybody. To think about ourselves and what we owe the past and the future. To think of why we feel love for things that are sacred, cultures, faiths, bodies, lands, family, children, parents, ourselves. Thank you.